tonight about a boy who learned to play. A number of years ago, I started a before-school physical activity program for overweight children. Now, the program had a lot of elements, but one was very important, and that was the element of free play. So every morning we would get up, we'd go to the school gym with these children, and we would play all sorts of games, and they would get very sweaty, and then they would run off to their class and start their day in school. The program was called Paw Pals, and Paw Pals is physical activity as a lifetime skill. And the reason that we named it that was we wanted to teach children how important and how fun play and physical activity actually is. Now, I had the pleasure in this program of meeting Brad. Now, Brad was a third grader, was 160 pounds, and he had a number of health-related issues. But what was neat about Brad is he was one of the most joyful little boys I had ever met in my whole entire life. So every morning we would get a group of us together and play games that these children had picked. Now what's neat about that is it allowed them to be physically active, but it also seemed so simple. Play. Play is a really simple concept. In fact, it doesn't seem powerful at all. Yet, it was important when we thought about play and its role in making these children healthy. So I want to explain why I chose to have these children play. There is a researcher, his name is Stuart Brown. He's a leading play researcher. And what's interesting about his work is he talks about play, that play is a spontaneous activity that brings joy and happiness to those who are participating. What's interesting about his work is he said, we learn how to play as children. And as we get older and older, we refine that ability. That seems, again, pretty straightforward. Unless you think about what Dr. Brown's work actually explains, and that is he looked at people who were in the criminal justice system. And what Dr. Brown realized is that individuals who did not learn to play grew to have antisocial behaviors and ultimately had criminal behaviors in many cases. So play is a core of the program, but also maybe is important for you and I. When we think about play in the context of a school, we really think about it being placed into two main silos, either recess or physical education class. We don't see the commingling of physical education and the rest of the academic disciplines. What we see is the silo effect, where the play program is situated over here and the academic disciplines are situated on the other side. To be honest with you, when I designed Paw Pals, I didn't think about combining them. In fact, when I designed Paw Pals, I wanted to achieve a couple of things. Number one, I wanted these youngsters to play more intensely and with greater joy, with the hope that through the rest of the day, they would actually be more interested in playing. The second piece is I had hoped that that play would ultimately result in health benefits. Now, our research on the program supports that. In fact, what we found is that youngsters in this program, number one, played more intensely over time during the program, but then they started playing more at recess. They played more after school. So they were burning all these extra calories from play. Additionally, we saw a link between a benefit in their health and the program. So play, again, impacted their health. But you know, Brad stepped back in my life to teach me another lesson. He came running into me. He's like, Jackie, look it. And he held up this piece of paper, and it had an A on it. And I thought, all right, I got an A on the test. That's great. He was so excited. He said, you know, I got to explain why. I said, Brad, what's up? He was a little excitable young man anyway. And he said, it's because of Paw Pals. It's only because of Paw Pals. Paw Pals is making me smarter. When I play, I get smarter. This is Brad being Brad. I thought, I don't think there's a connection. But being the researcher that I am, I went on to take a look. Is there any research in the link between play and brain? What's interesting? When we look at the research on the brain, what we find is that when an individual engages in play, their front of their brain lights up. So it actually impacts the neurons in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. That region of your brain is really important. It helps you to learn how to make better decisions. It helps you to learn how to manage your emotions and your behaviors. So in essence, there is this building group of researchers that are understanding the role of playing and actually what happens in the brain. What was fascinating for me is I then began to hear from parents and teachers and other students in the program that they were starting to do better in school. And I'd like to share one of the stories with you now, and this is a young man in his own words.
When I first started third grade, in school I wasn't doing that good, but then I started doing a lot better because I was more focused on my work.
What's disturbing, however, is that many children that are elementary aged and beyond are not getting enough play or physical activity every day. In fact, 1 in 4 children are meeting the United States recommended guidelines of 60 minutes of physical activity that's of moderate intensity every day. So it is intriguing to think about the fact that maybe children are right about play, but they're not engaging in it. And if you look, the research on the brain continues. And this actually is an illustration of a brain of a child who walked on a treadmill for 20 minutes versus sat for 20 minutes before they took an exam. Now, wouldn't it be great if all you needed to do better on an exam is just to go for a short walk? If you look, the brain is really highlighted and more blood flow and more activity is going on in the brain when you're physically active. And it's in regions of the brain that help you concentrate and engage and remember and problem solve. Yet, even though I think the literature is there and the connections are there, we see that play impacts not only the physical health but also the academic side. Schools just aren't really providing enough physical activity for children. So Brad was right. Playing actually impacted how he thought. It impacted how he learned. It impacted who he became as a young man. I personally believe that physical activity and play is essential to the health of the whole child. Not just their physical health, but also their emotional, their cognitive, and yes, their academic health. But it's not my opinion that matters. The question is, do you believe it? Thank you.